So what I do is I go into my field and I sort of strike a tuning fork of the frequency that I'm living in, and I raise it up to like a diamond light is what I often work with. Just a really super clear energy, like mountaintop air or something. And I open up that ball and I include the whole planet, all the people, good people, crazy people,
Yes.
everybody. And I strike the tuning fork and I put that frequency all in the entire field. And all the people are in there with it. And this is all in my mind. And then I kind of like really turn on the light switch and I light that whole thing up, and I don't send anything anywhere because the field lights up. When I choose it, it does it. And then it's everywhere. And at that point, then I relax and stay in my center and know the field is working.
Welcome, everyone, to the Spiritual Forum. I'm so glad you're here. I just got back from my Whole Planet Spirituality Retreat and Unity Village, and I am hoping to record something about that at another time. Right now, I have a new guest, and I'm starting at my weekly podcast again to get my inventory up, and I'm just so grateful to have with me Penney Peirce. She is an internationally respected clairvoyant, empath, visionary, and pioneer in transformation dynamics, intuition development, expanded perception, and dream work. She trains and advises coaches, business and government leaders, psychologists, scientists, celebrities, and seekers of all types. Penny is known for her common sense approach to spirituality and the development of expanded human capacities. She's author of 11 best-selling books, including the long-running classic, Frequency: The Power of Personal Vibration, and we'll have links to her books in the show notes. Welcome, Penny.
It's so good to be here. Thanks.
Yes,
Thank you.
it's great to have you. I think frequency is a subject that a lot of people are interested in learning about, and I've got all sorts of questions. I read through your book, but before we get into our conversation, I was hoping that you could just share not your full long story, but just give us a little synopsis about how it is that you've gotten to be doing the work that you're doing, and in particular, this long-standing book, Frequency, which I know is a big favorite amongst lots and lots of people.
Yeah. Well, there's many facets, of course. I grew up moving all over the country about every 2 years. My father was a kind of troubleshooting management consultant. And that was great because it let me experience a lot of different kinds of places and different kinds of people. And I think that laid a foundation. I later went to school in design, interior design, then graphic design, and became a corporate art director, which also taught me about intuition. You had to design a logo to represent somebody or certain typefaces that would go with their energy, and so I got a lot of training through the regular world, but then ended up moving up into Marin County, California, which is
Cool.
right in the beginning of a lot of the consciousness movement stuff.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I had been very curious all through, I guess, high school about mysteries and psychism and how all that kind of stuff worked. And it was like everything opened up. And I took some classes, and one of them was on clairvoyance development because I was visual. So I thought, well, maybe this is interesting. Maybe I can do it. And it turned out I could, and that morphed into everything just seemed to unfold and turn into the next thing. Like I got laid off from my job, but I started a business doing working with readings and doing people's charts and doing all kinds of metaphysical things, which grew and grew and grew. And then I started working with Stanford Research Institute and in California still, and um, then went to Japan and worked with them in Japan for, gosh, I ended up working in Japan over 20 years
Oh,
on and off, which is another huge development because it teaches you how to see the world from a totally different perspective, you know, from American views. And at a certain point, I realized, well, what's next? I was doing trainings on intuition development. And I said, the next thing is really, I need to write a book. And so I wrote The Intuitive Way, which was the first book now in my transformation series. But meanwhile, I was doing hundreds and hundreds and thousands, actually, of private sessions for people and learning an awful lot about how things work energetically. And I could tell things were accelerating year by year.
uh-huh.
And I hadn't quite put it together with frequency yet. But after The Intuitive Way, the next thing that really came along was frequency. And how do you work with energy? And it was really on a leading edge then. This was like 2008 or so.
Uh-huh.
And I thought I knew what I was talking about, but as I started writing it, something else came through and gave me a lot of extra dimension about what it was and how it worked, and how you could adjust your own frequency to change results in your life, and all of the basics about how to work with frequency dynamics. And after that, I wrote about leap of perception, which is how we are changing our perception from linear thinking to spherical and holographic thinking, which is the huge core of how consciousness is changing. That's, I think, the real key to what transformation is. But I don't think I even understood what transformation was in the very beginning. I thought maybe it was kind of like change, but no, it's so much more. It's a total shift of reality and identity and the way everything works. Um, and after Leap of Perception, I wrote Transparency, which is, I think, one of the better books. It's um, we're all in a process spiritually, I think, of clearing ourselves of fear and fear-based beliefs and ideas, and working with the soul more and more, becoming the soul consciously in the personality, in the body. And as you do clear away the things that are contractive and allow that self to expand and come through, um, you really do transform into so many of these new ways of perceiving and acting and being that are happening now. Um, so it's just been a gradual process. And I just wait and sort of, it's almost like planes coming into land. There's another one there waiting to come in. And so I've been working now on a new book called On Money and Transformation, and what money really is, the core
Oh
core of
gosh.
it.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's, I don't know exactly when that'll come out, but they have now, relaunched Frequency in its 15th year anniversary edition. So I wrote a whole new chapter and updated everything, and so it's out now, and it's got at least 120 new pages in it. It's really good. Um,
It's
so
exciting. It's exciting that you had this kind of bestseller from so many years ago that they're
it's still
relaunching.
selling.
I
It's still
know.
people still discovering it.
I
It
know.
was
It's
yeah,
really it's a great
yeah,
book, and it's exciting that it's being kind of like updated because the world has been updated, and
yeah.
it's now it's available at another level for more people. That's pretty cool. I've got a few things I want to ask you about from your story. First of all, I've had several people on this podcast that end up having these kind of special abilities, intuitive and clairvoyance and seeing energy and all of that. And it was after some massive, crazy experience that they had, some near death thing or something else where they had visions or opening
Right.
kundalini, all that. And your story is different because you wanted to know how you could see if you could develop your clairvoyance
Mhm.
back in Marin County. And so that is so different. It sounds like it's so much more accessible for all of us that don't have all of those fantastical experiences. And suddenly now the C's part, then we have special abilities. I think that's so
Yes.
interesting.
Well, I thought it was interesting too because most of the people I ended up being around were also of that ilk, where they had a dramatic thing. And I was just like a girl from the Midwest, and um, uh, very sensitive and artistic, and that fed me, I think, all the years. But then it's almost like the whatever my life work was supposed to be, it just started emerging in, I call it dribs and drabs, like, and something would seem familiar, and I go, "Oh, I would like to know more about that," and then I would just integrate it, and I'd do a new thing, and then a gift would come through, and I'd be a little better at that. So it was a gradual process, which I think is the normal way people do things. So
Yes.
I felt pretty good about being a representative of that process, that it doesn't have to be dramatic and just a special few who have this.
Right. It's so
Yeah.
important. It's so important because I think the rest of us get kind of frustrated. Like, why are we left behind? Why don't we have these special experiences and these special skills? So, do you think that we all have this clairvoyance or empath and these abilities that we're just not tuned in?
Yeah, I think some people have a special um, life work
Hmm.
that needs to use these abilities, so that comes to the fore maybe a little earlier. But I think everyone, especially now as the frequency on the planet is accelerating and getting more intense and higher, um, it's accelerating everything in our own makeup, whether you think you need to be intuitive or not. Um, and so I think that the vibration of the emotions, which used to be pretty low frequency, is now rising up and it's becoming sensitivity. In fact, ultra sensitivity and then empathy. But it allows us to be sensitive to energy information. We're reading the vibration of places and maybe not consciously knowing that we're doing it, but we're very sensitive to all these things now and
Yes.
having responses or reactions to things. And so the emotions are kind of increasing in frequency, but your mind is increasing in frequency too. So you're not thinking so many negative thoughts. In other words, you're thinking more about how things connect together, or what the deeper meaning of something is, how something might be unnecessary, like an old pattern that you don't need to suffer anymore, or a certain piece of karma that you have that you've really outgrown it and you've already done it, and now you realize it and you just can drop it, kind of like a cape off of your shoulders, and um, so, um, I think everybody can do it. It's not a thing you have to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's something it's already an innate ability,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I think you develop it by paying attention.
Right, right. So can we talk a little bit about the frequency of the earth? Because I hear this and I don't know how you measure the frequency of the earth. Is it the actual earth or is it like the frequency of the average consciousness of people on this planet? Is the earth itself, the earth body, has a frequency that has risen in recent times?
Mhm. It's a good question. Um, I think it's all of that. It's all connected. But I think that there are energy waves coming into our vicinity, sometimes from the sun, but also from high levels of intergalactic places.
Okay.
I've seen that in dreams that there were events in the solar system, uh, in our galaxy, that were sending waves toward us, and it feels like waves, like it comes and then you kind of integrate it, and then things get intense again, and then you sort of integrate it, and it's been doing that for years,
Okay.
but it's really intensified now. Now, I think that affects the frequency of the earth because they do have the Schumann resonance, which is a measurement, I believe, of the resonance between the center of the earth and the ionosphere. Something about the energy that waves that go back and forth.
Okay.
And it has risen. Um, but I think it has something to do with our experience of time as well. our bodies are made of earth, so
Mhm.
we are connected to the frequency of the planet, and our consciousness is connected to all the higher consciousnesses around us in the universe.
Yeah, I've
So
always just
another
I
uh,
just always wonder what the cause and effective is the Earth
mm,
causing our frequency to rise, or is our frequency causing the Earth's frequency to rise?
well, I think it's a lot of things that are causing things, but I think it's simultaneous for everything on Earth to be going up a bit in frequency.
Okay, okay.
Even, bugs and trees and birds. Uh, but I think that we also have an input from a lot of very high beings, non physical beings, whether those are beings that have lived on Earth, like our ascended masters that are around the Earth. But also, I work a lot with intergalactic beings in dreams. Like they're
Okay.
very tall. I never see faces or anything, but they're like 8 feet tall or something and kind of pale, whitish, bluish in color. And they're working on helping me raise my frequency or adapt myself or get a tune up and giving me instructions and things. And I have since my 20s had those dreams.
Interesting.
But I had vision in one of my dreams that a lot of beings were coming from everywhere around to pile in around the earth to watch what was going to be happening here, the raising of the frequency on the planet and making a big shift at some point. And it's their presence that acts as another force because they're very high frequency beings and they're right there in the field with us. And it's causing us to go, wait a minute, who's here? Like maybe
Right.
yearn for that higher spiritual knowing.
It does seem like people's consciousness is more ready for the idea that there are other beings amongst us or watching us or something like that. Whereas even like 10 or 20 years ago, people I think would be more like, that's crazy. It just seems like
Yeah.
there's more of a readiness for that.
Mhm.
And so I've got a couple questions. One is I want to talk about where we are in the world now, what's going on, all the transformation that's happening in the world right now. But before we do that, can we just lay down the foundation for what frequency is? Because I know that frequency it's like a wavelength, and
Mhm.
the shorter the wavelength, the higher the frequency, and the lower the wavelength,
Right.
the lower the frequency. The thing that I've always been confused about, and, this may be such a beginner question, but I know that when we're in a state of, like, meditation, we're in kind of a lower
Right.
frequency, and that's when we experience, more oneness and interconnectivity, and we have illumination and ideas and, just kinda come away with a sense of all is one and all of that. So then why is a higher frequency better if we
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's actually the reverse.
Okay.
The I mean, frequency is the amount of waves within a certain
Right.
thing. But what beta frequency, for instance, in brain waves is everyday consciousness, and it has a lot of,
It's
commotion.
kinetic, yeah.
Yes, and then as you get calmer and you become more aware of the spiritual realms, you go closer to the being and less in the left brain.
Yes.
And as that calms you down, it goes into delta and theta and gamma and whatever all they are now.
Yeah.
Um, and those allow they're calmer and deeper and more expansive. And so I consider those to be actually the high vibrational waves because
Okay.
they allow you access to the higher realms, which are very calm.
Yeah, that
But
makes more
as
sense to me.
Yeah,
Because the idea that we wanna get more frenetic just
we
never really
don't want that's the exact opposite. And especially if you're trying to raise your vibration and
Right.
do things more, it gets lower, you
Okay.
know.
Alright. So, it doesn't exactly map into physics.
It's more like fear versus love. When
Yes.
you're in fear, it's very intense and frenetic and so forth. And when you go more toward love and wisdom and unity, things calm way down and you see much more. You have access
Yes.
to huge everything, to the imaginal realm, the unified field, everything.
Yes. Okay. Was it? Because
And
that's always confused me. Because it seems like we want to
Mhm.
lower our frequency to me. But,
Right.
okay. So we live in a world that, I mean, there are powers that shouldn't be out there that love the frenetic, love the crazy, want us to stay in fear. Just turn on the news, turn on talk shows or whatever, and it's all about fear, fear, fear. And it seems like they're wanting us to be in that beta and wanting us to be, or maybe they don't, and it's just accidental. But it seems like that the world is kind of designed to uh, keep us stuck
Mhm.
in those kinds of vibrations.
Yeah.
And but I think that what's happening in the world, and you tell me what you think is happening in the world, but there's something that's awakening in people. And I think more and more people are starting to see that and starting to see that that's a trap that's I'm being kind of lured into, and I want to make new choices. And there's another world that I want to experience. And I feel that more people are shifting towards that. And I'm just really interested in you telling me what you think this time on the planet really is about.
Well, you're accurate in so many ways there. I think that there is a huge awakening right now, and it is the presence of spirit. It's the idea that spirit is actually inside matter. It's not out there in heaven somewhere far
Mhm.
away. That it has a lot to do with how we perceive things and our the frequency of our own body. I call it your home frequency, which is kind of like the soul in the body. When you're being your clear diamond light self in the body and radiating that, you're clear, you're wise, you're more loving, you're kind, so many things that are indicative of a spiritual nature. But I don't think that there's any sort of what would you call that? Like a plan or a conspiracy or anything to try to keep us in these fear-based states. That has been the natural state of humanity for many, many,
Mhm.
many eons because of this perception. When we come as souls into the physical three-dimensional world, you immediately fragment what was unified fragments. It slows down so much that it fragments. So I have a self that looks like a body and separate from your body, and then to get to your body, I have to cross empty space, like except that it's actually full of air and particles. So there's no emptiness anywhere, but it looks that way. And so the idea of separation is the big uh, problem because it creates fear. So it
Mhm.
looks like here's me and there's the outside world. And it's so big and it's scary and it's dominating me. And I have to try to have my own power. I have to try to be good or more than powerful than others, or be a victim and let everybody do stuff to me and have that as an identity. So what's happening now is that the subconscious fears that we used to be able to stuff down into some place where we didn't need to look at them, that realm is also increasing in frequency. And that means that those subconscious fears, which are low frequency, have no place to hide anymore. So they're popping up into the surface of daily reality, into our conscious minds. And we're starting to relive them or see them reenacted in front of us.
Mhm. Mhm.
And all this um, old stuff is coming back into the present moment, and we're having to face it. But a lot of people don't want to face it, and they're trying to restuff it back down into somewhere, but it won't
Okay.
go. And so it keeps popping up.
So the
So what's happening, let me finish
Red.
this. What's happening is that we're sort of swimming around in this ocean of junk, of upsetting thoughts. And it's our own and it's everybody else's. And it's individual stuff is in your personal life. But when it comes up collectively, which is happening now, it's in the news, it's in current events, it is in socio-political, groups and all of this. And that is why we're experiencing now so much polarization
Okay.
because everything that's fear-based is always based on separation. So it's me against that, the outside, me and that, or them against me, and so I have to protect myself from all of that or firm up my belief systems and get with other people who have the same belief systems that I do. And then we'll go as a group and fight them off or whatever. And we're seeing the reactionary response to the higher frequencies and then the responsive response, which is for the people who are waking up. They understand that there's a method for clearing those fears, that they're not actually real anymore, that maybe they happened to you in a past life or in your childhood. And yeah, and they scared you when you contracted and stayed that way. And now you can relax and review it and say, well, that's old. No, boring. It's not even my idea. It was my mother's idea or my father's idea. And I took it on in order to agree with them. And so we're starting to find pretty easy ways of clearing all that contracted energy now. And so then we're getting clearer and clearer and clearer and more loving. And the more loving you become, the faster you clear all the old remnants of fear. It's a change of, proportion. The other people who are contracting and going like back into wanting to go back into the past and have everything be the way it used to be, where at least we knew what was happening, um, they are getting denser,
Okay.
and they will have repercussions from that. But so that's part of why we're all so busy, teaching and healing and trying to help people understand that it's not that hard to clear things. And
Okay.
when you clear it, you get something better.
All right. So when you look out on the landscape of the world, it looks there's a certain insanity to it. There's a certain craziness to it. And so I just want to make sure I understand this. So are you saying that this is like the stuff we've been stuffing in our subconscious for our whole lives, but also just our ancestors and everything that we've kind of inherited, that is coming to the surface and really it's projected into the world. So what we're seeing out there with the craziness and the polarity and the people in their little groups and fighting each other and the nutty politics and
Yeah.
and the extremes, that's a projection of what's coming to the surface from our kind of individual and collective subconscious. Okay.
Mhm.
And so it's a great opportunity then I'm just paraphrasing to make sure I understand.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. It's a great opportunity for us to go look at it now. I see it. Wow, look at that. That's what's inside me. And then those who are conscious at a certain level of consciousness, I don't want to judge people's consciousness levels, but can look at that and clear it and make new decisions and clear their own subconscious and let go of what doesn't serve them. And then there are others that are really holding on to it. They're really getting into antagonistic groups, and my group and your group, and
mhm,
I mean, they're really holding on to it. And there's a real angst and a hate that's coming out of a lot of people, and so that's kind of the choice they're making at seeing it. So
right.
overall, there's more of this clearing going on that you're seeing that I think overall, hopefully, will impact those that are kind of holding on as well. But
It will
okay.
impact it, it many of the spiritual wise people have said it's not gonna take even 51% of people to become clear to make a shift on the planet.
Yes,
And
yes,
already I think a lot of people it's the people who've become clear are hooking up with friends who are also becoming clear, and we're having this sort of convening,
yes,
is what I call it,
yes.
of like-minded or frequency matching people who then start sharing, and then a lot of the ego is gone out of that. The ego is that part that wants that self-preservation in this one defined way that we've come to see ourselves. And but as the people who are you know, upping their frequency come together, they often have puzzle pieces that fit together and maybe have projects that they want to do, and or they're an educational group or they have, but it's fits together and there's a kind of a streamlining of things and then an expansion of that knowledge base. And it's inviting people into that field of knowledge, very easily. You don't have to go out and knock people over the head, just create the field of that higher frequency knowledge, and people who are ready will find it. They're hungry for it,
Yeah. If
you
you
know.
build, they will come.
Mhm.
It's so interesting because I mentioned when I started, I just came back from leading this retreat, and it was a group of like-hearted people, probably about 45 people, so from around the
Mm,
country, and the theme was a world that works for all, and all of these people, not all, but most of these people are very sensitive people, and we're sensitive to the planet and animals, and we're very much interested in creating a nonviolent, peaceful, loving world. And it was really interesting how all of our hearts opened. And for those that were kind of on not quite there, but they were part of us, that group, they all kind of shifted into the same energy pattern that we were. And even though we know that this idea of creating a world that works for all is still kind of a dream that we can't exactly see
mhm.
because we're not quite at that level of consciousness, because everyone's has so many different ideas about what that looks like. We were able to hang in just the space of that's our intention. And it was
Mhm.
magical. Something happened that was just magical energetically. And and I'm thinking, that's enough. It's like we can't go out and make the world change and be like I am, or think like I do, or love animals like I do, or love trees like I do. But based on what you're saying, it seems like what we're doing is what the consciousness and the planet is asking us to do, just gathering together and being this bundle of wonderful consciousness and love, and that's good enough.
It is. I think a lot of it, if you go down deeper, it has a lot to do with creating a field
Yes.
of harmonious energy,
Okay.
or morphological field, if you will. And then a lot of times those groups are starting to hook up with other groups
Yes.
that are doing the same thing.
Right.
So that group mind phenomena is starting to happen where we start to find resonance with lots of other people. And that it's kind of the 100th monkey syndrome. It's helping things materialize faster because it's like a geometric progression instead of an arithmetic progression. It's goes faster. And I kind of feel that, oh gosh, that a lot of what it is, it's not about, we're trying to get out of this linear thinking where I send energy over to you, or, so I've stopped using the word intention
Okay.
because it futurizes something.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to keep things in the present moment, which to me is a big sphere. You have a field around you. It's a ball of energy, your personal sphere, your field. Um, and so attention is the present moment. So what you place attention on and what you put yourself in you can imagine yourself inside a field of a certain state of being, for instance. Like, what if I lived inside of kindness right now? What would I do? And I had kindness all through my body and it was all around me. And then I opened it up and I let other people into the field with me. And we all lived in that field. Now, the field does the work. It's a frequency that is there. It's just like what happened in your group. You established a certain kind of tone, and everybody who wasn't even quite there yet started to feel it and go, yeah, kind of like that. And I think I'll modulate myself a bit more to get at that frequency because I want to connect. We like to connect.
Mhm.
We're tribal, you know, and so we want to match frequencies. That's why you tend to feel bad when you're around a victim, that's just complaining all the time
Mhm.
because you're like, like, let me die. I'm fighting this, or I have to agree with them, or. Um, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's easier than we think because when you stop thinking, you have all this empty space that you have to cross and use willpower to get through to other people. You don't have to do it that way. And that takes a lot of time that way also. So, what I do is I go into my field and sort of strike a tuning fork of the frequency that I'm living in, and I raise it up to like a diamond light is what I often work with. Just a really super clear energy, like mountaintop air or something, really clear. And or I make it golden or something, and I open up that ball and I include the whole planet, all the people, good people, crazy people,
Yes.
everybody. And I strike the tuning fork and I put that frequency all in the entire field. And all the people are in there with it. And this is all in my mind. And then I kind of like really turn on the light switch and I light that whole thing up, and I don't send anything anywhere because the field lights up. When I choose it, it does it. And then it's everywhere. And at that point, then I relax and stay in my center and know the field is working. So everybody can do that from wherever they are. And imagine all these fields just kind of starting to overlap and integrate with each other and becoming one large field. That's why things can accelerate so much on the planet in terms of transformation.
So this is so interesting because I know I'm a unity minister, and in unity, we've always taught that, the individual consciousness, raising your own consciousness, that's the work that you can do. That is, you
Mhm.
can't change people, places, and things, but you can change yourself. And a lot of people get frustrated with that. But the world's a mess, and I've got to go out and fight for, fight against this and fight against that. And it's almost like I have to willfully, or the belief that to make a difference, I have to willfully put this energy out there so that people can see,
Yeah.
look at the cruelty, look at the exploitation, look at this. We need to change. And that's kind of a whole different thing than what you're talking about when you're creating the
Well,
sphere.
it's one step toward it. And yes, you work on yourself because that's what you've got.
Yes.
But as you do, you're clearing fear. And as you do that, you become more aware that you're a bigger kind of being. You're allowing you, the soul, to come through you, the personality. And I am the soul now, 100%. I live here. I don't have a soul out there somewhere like a possession. I'm here, and I'm trying to clean up my vehicle so that I can come out all the way. And then I'm working with the big we. I am me, I'm an individual, and I am us, I'm the collective soul. And it's both, So when I could become so clear, then all the beings who are very clear at that high soul level, they can work with me. They can say, well, we kind of know, and I'm in there too. We all know that what Penny needs next in her next project, and we're going to give her the glimmer of that idea. And then I start to recognize it because I have a practice of noticing what I notice. That's part of my intuitive practice.
Uh-huh.
So what is happening around here? Why did that event happen that way? And I interpret these things and get the messages from them. And that's messages coming from us and me because I'm a part of the us. And so they're helping me, or we're helping me. And then
Okay.
when I do the project, like write a book and I put it back out into the world, it helps a lot of people. And then they can help other people. And,
Yes. Yeah.
it's all
Yeah.
mutually inclusive.
Yeah, and speaking of
So,
inclusive, when you're talking about the sphere that you're creating and you're including everyone in it, because the
mhm,
ego has this tendency to say, well, let me gather my people
right. Who
and
are
let
like
who are
me,
like me,
and the
for
others are out
and the
there,
others, and the world would be
they're
fine
the,
as long as we get those people gone in some way, and then we'll have our
yeah.
little sphere here. And
Yeah.
there's such a ego, alluring ego
Well,
thing
the
there.
ego is isolated. When
Yeah.
you really come down to it, it's the left brain gone amok. It's very isolating and individualizing. And as you open up and go more into your right brain and open intuition, you start to feel connections to things.
Yeah.
The left brain goes toward definition of and condensing things down into this means this one thing, and here's the rule, about it. And as you open your right brain, The left brain and the ego has a different function. It's you're allowing things to come in from the unified field that you need now, and it needs to become finite, and the left brain recognizes that and pronounces it and says, "Oh, this is what it is now." And that's very helpful because otherwise we couldn't know anything. You know, it would just be we'd be out there knowing it all and just not having any individuality at all. But we came into fragment into individuality and all these other forms. Um, so, I think it's quite a lesson to learn how to balance that sense of individuality and connectedness.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's almost an effort to stay individual,
Do you
you
think that's
know?
why we're here? Do you why do you think that what do you think the whole or do you have a model for what the Earth is and what we're why we're here and our I mean, everybody has some sort of thoughts about it. Do you have some?
I think that there are many beings out of all of the points of consciousness in the grand universe that wanted to experiment with coming down in frequency more and creating a three-dimensional reality. And as we co create that reality, forms appear that come out of um, sort of the inner blueprints of certain mindsets. Like a planet is kind of a mindset, it's a certain kind of reality, base of reality. And then each person has a little ball that's like their planet, their plane of existence that is their reality. And they often overlap, and we overlap with the intergalactics who have different kinds of bodies. Maybe they don't become as dense as we do, you know. But I think really people who become human on Earth really had a curiosity to come down in frequency and see what happens when you do that. Oh, we're fragmented now. Oh my gosh. And we look different and all these things. And then that separation starts to create the fear. And then we get tribal and then we get all, individualized into bodies and groups. And then we fight, and then over time, we've had this idea that the physical world is a place of pain and suffering instead of just a great grand canvas for our being mini creators here.
Yeah. 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 I I um I want to move on, but I just want to ask you one more question. So, what do you think like trees and animals are?
I think they are also materializations of different kinds of energy patterns, and some are very sentient
Yes.
beings,
Yeah.
and certainly trees are, and animals, but they may have more like group souls or group consciousnesses that brought them in, and but I think they're quite responsive. I think rocks are too.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
You know,
asking because that's really where the retreat just I came off of. We see the sentience, we experience the sentience in all these beings, and
yeah,
not just humans. And there's just a compassionate heart around all of life versus just
yeah,
humans.
right.
Yeah,
They're in some ways they're equal beings.
yeah. And how we experience our seeing the divine in the trees, seeing the divine in the animals, seeing the divine in humans. There's not a real delineation. There may be delineation. I think in your book you even talk about there's different levels of consciousness or of humans and animals and trees, but that they all have the divine in them. There's all something beautiful in them. They all have some kind of a soul or some
Mhm,
kind of a spirit,
mhm.
some kind of a sentience. So to me, part of growing in consciousness is experience the vast oneness and connectedness with all, not just our fellow
Right.
humans. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, we've come to, involve ourselves into form, and now we evolve and turn. That's evolving. Evolving is turning back out, spiraling back out to remembering where we started,
yeah,
our home place.
yeah,
And we do this all the time, yeah, while we're here, every day, every minute. We come in and we think a thought, and then we kind of space out, go back out, and then we come back. We have a thought, and then we space out again. We have pauses in between actions. We're doing this all the time.
yeah.
So I think the worlds are merged. I don't think that the three-dimensional world is separate from spirit. It's a frequency within the totality of spirit. It's like we can have low-level thoughts if we want. Fear does exist if you put attention on it,
Yeah, I get that.
you know?
Yeah. I'd like to pivot a little bit to
Mhm,
you say that we are leaving the information age and entering the intuition phase. And I'd like for you to say a little bit more about that, particularly in light of it does look like there's a whole bunch of information going on out there with
mhm.
AI and transhumanism and whatnot. So I'm interested in how we're going to transition or how we are transitioning into this intuition phase with that movement going on as well.
It is interesting. Um, yeah, I think that what I think of it is as left brain dominance and the ego not wanting to die.
Okay.
Ego death is really the shift from ego thinking it's the boss and the left brain thinking it's the main identity. And when you say I, you're actually identifying with the left brain and the way it talks about and makes rules and definitions about who everything is and what everything is. We get very identified with the left brain. But we're now seeing that we're imbalanced, a lot of people. So we're trying to open our right brain and our body. And the heart and the right brain to me are very interconnected. These are the openings to the soul to and intuition is like the doorway into that knowing. And so many people now are responding to that sense that we need to balance out. We need to bring this other part of ourselves in here now. This is the time. And so that is, how well we're still communicating with words, so we're going to have that as a way of getting people into the practices and the experiential work of, feeling and then knowing directly what these things are and how the universal principles function. But we had to use language to get us to like shift over into it, and then we need practices that we do, and then we can talk about it again. We're here to communicate. But I think there is an evolution of AI and all of the technology stuff, which is a response to acceleration of the left brain. Now, maybe it will take us to a point where it actually turns into the right brain. There's some point it's going to like merge. And the right brain, if you keep opening and going into that direct knowing state, you won't need AI.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking because we have
Mhm.
this idea that language is this kind of superior thing that we're superior to how we used to be once we got language and that
Mhm.
language is this ultimate thing, but I think what you're saying is at some point intuition is a knowing and will we
Mhm.
even need language if we know and we be able to communicate in other ways. And the whole AI thing is so interesting that it's happening now. So, I was just wondering if it also might be the repressed subconscious that's coming out. But you're saying it might be like almost like the death throes of the ego?
I think that the ego is learning to shift its identity from that it is not the boss of everything. It
Uh-huh.
does not control things. It's really the right brain and that opening into the soul and the collective soul and divine consciousness that fuels what we know,
Eh
and so the left brain is more the servant, implementer, and the right brain is the master. It is the core thing. It opens you into higher truth. So we need both as humans. We've developed both. But I think we're going to move into a stage now where the whole brain becomes holographic, where every single particle of it knows every single other thing. And it then expands the brain, maybe not physically so much, but into a way of knowing much more about universal knowledge, of high level, intergalactic or whatever knowledge.
So then AI is kind of a mimicker,
Yes,
a
yes.
mimicker of our true capacity.
Yeah, that's right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it may make some things easier that will free up our time so that we can get into some better kind of innovation and bringing things through that will help the planet and so forth. Um,
Okay.
I know it wouldn't be happening if it weren't being guided to happen, but a lot of things are there to show us a shadow side of something. Comparison. We learn by comparison. Well,
Mhm.
that didn't work, so let me go over here and try it this way.
That wasn't so good.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of we oscillate all the time. So
Yeah.
from contraction to expansion, then back to focus, and then back to opening up and sharing, and then back to another choice.
Yeah.
So contraction isn't bad because I think it is about choice. You have to narrow down to the particle, almost to the one point of an idea, and choose it, and then it expands out and materializes. And then you get bored with that, and then you go back down to the next thing, right? I mean, it's always flowing.
It's a fun cycle. So we're kind of coming near the end. I want to make sure that I will give you the opportunities to say your last words, but I want to get this back to the individual. Like, so somebody who's listening,
Mhm.
and saying, well, what can I do? How do I raise my frequency? What can I do? Can you help with the individual if they're asking
Yeah.
that question? What should they be doing?
Well, first of all, in my book Frequency, I talk a lot about your home frequency and how to get into that. And it is the way you love to feel, your favorite way of being. And, you can think about that. What things have brought you great, simple pleasures in the past, playing with a puppy, or it's just smelling the spring flowers, the fall leaves, or whatever, a texture of energy, soft or a fluidity that makes you feel really great. A lot of people have different mechanisms for tuning into that. I chose the idea of cheerfulness kind of when I thought about mine, because if I'm in a bad mood and I can start to feel cheerful about something, I get recentered again. So, but part of it is choosing that state or identifying that state and then noticing what you notice. Like, did something knock me off center? And I'm not in that state right now, but I don't have to keep going in that negative state. I'm going to recenter again right now because I prefer this state. Like, it is my preferred state. So you start a habit of that, of not letting yourself wander too far afield from that state. And if you do, you look at it and say, why did I do that? What is there a fear there I need to clear that threw me off base? And it's part of clearing. But when you stay in that state, things start to make sense. You feel yourself more, you get clearer. And it's a fairly simple thing. It's just pay attention to what's really real for you, not these old emotional negative things that are not maybe even yours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like in a way be a little selfish to have things be the way you like to feel. You're in charge of that, you know. And then I just find that habit of noticing what you notice and reading your reality and shifting back to the state where you can see it through a filter of kindness or understanding and seeing other people's vulnerabilities maybe and then having compassion. But these are habits. And as you do that more and more, your frequency goes up and up.
I love that. So you call that your home frequency?
Yeah.
I love that. Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, who doesn't like puppies or kittens or
Right.
the smell of fresh
Right.
flowers or
Yeah.
whatever, the lake? We all have something. We all have
Mhm.
something that just really takes us to either like a childlike play or a sense of awe or just a sense
Mhm.
of calmness, a sense of, "Oh,
Totally.
I mean, a world full of puppies, I mean, it couldn't be better."
Or hummingbirds,
Yeah, whatever, yeah,
dragonflies, whatever.
yeah.
There's so many wonderful things.
We all have that. So and then we
Yeah.
have the power to bring ourselves back to that place. We aren't victims of everything that's happening out there. We can
Right.
always come back to this place no matter what circumstance we're in. No one can take that from us. No one can take our home frequency from us.
No.
It
No.
it's ours. So it's just really our responsibility to remember to come back to that place.
Yeah. And you think about babies, we come in and I call it your original tone.
Ah, I love it.
If you could hear the sound of a new baby and that soul that's there, it's a lot of joy and it's a lot of curiosity and it's everything really pretty much positive. And you can go back into that kind of tone as well, like what you came in with. There's a way of imagining a feeling state of some of that, and I think that works.
I love this because I'm thinking I have friends that have anxiety attacks, panic attacks, and it
Mhm.
seems like this is something maybe when you're in the middle of a panic attack, it's really hard to have that control of coming back to your home frequency, but it seems like if there was something that you could just kinda like, snap your fingers and remember that you could come back, it seems like that would really help you come to your
Right.
to a better place.
Yeah, and you can take a snapshot of that state and then slide back toward it. There would
Okay,
be one little texture or color or movement or quality that can do it for you.
okay, okay,
And then you move back into the fullness of that state, which is quite full and inclusive.
alright. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Penny. This has been a really fun conversation, very enlightening. I think it's going to be very helpful for everybody who's listening. I mean, I don't know if you've got something else you want to say that I might not have even covered. We just kind of go organically where we go. So I want to give you the last words.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to trust, I call it radical
Uh
trust.
huh.
Trust yourself, the flow of how you and the we are bringing things to your attention. You notice what you notice for a good reason, and it's in the right sequence, and everything is evolutionary. So you can absolutely trust the flow of the way things occur. And then if you really are quiet with that, you can trust your own sense of things, your own feeling states. And you know if something's comfortable or tense it doesn't really work. Something is a lie or truth. So you develop that sense of believing in yourself and I think that helps so much. Just to help guide you along the way and you don't miss things that way and have to repeat them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Radical trust.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I sign off on my newsletter. I sign off as live fearlessly, love outrageously, and trust radically.
There you go. Yeah. That's it.
Trust radical. It does
Mhm.
take radical trust. It really does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And it also takes your sense of your home frequency. What is appropriate for me right now?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And it's
For
not a
yourself.
boundary, it's a sense of alignment with frequencies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Penny. Thank you for being
Yeah.
with me. And we'll have
It's
the
a
links to
pleasure.
your book and anything else that you
Mhm.
want, social media, anything. I think this has been a really enlightening and enlivening conversation. So I appreciate you coming on.
Well, I thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it too.
Okay. And thank you, everybody who's listening. And I now close the spiritual forum.